Long before AI became a buzzword as it is today, one engineer was already asking a different question. Why are we still drowning in PDFs when the data we need is locked inside? Today's guest is Stevan Lukic, a chartered civil engineer who saw the potential of AI before most in the industry knew what to do with it. After nearly a decade at Arup designing major infrastructure, Stevan taught himself how to code, left his corporate role, and founded Civils.ai, a startup rethinking how construction teams extract and act upon data. This episode unpacks Stevan's early conviction that the future of engineering wasn't just technical, it was computational. We'll explore how Civils.ai is helping firms move beyond chatbots and into the AI-powered workflows built for real construction challenges, and what it means to lead when the rest of the industry is still catching up. Because the next era of engineering won't be defined by faster drawings, but by smarter decisions driven by data we've only just begun to unlock. Welcome to the Structural Intelligence Podcast, the show where we explore the intersection of engineering, technology, and innovation. I'm your host, Owen Keenan, structural engineer, entrepreneur, and tech enthusiast. Each episode brings together innovators, experts, and thought leaders who are pushing the boundaries of what's possible in engineering and technology. Through deep conversations and practical insights, we explore how new tools, techniques, and mindsets are reshaping our industry. We hope you enjoy this episode. Welcome back to the Structural Intelligence Podcast, where we dive into software, data, and emerging technologies that are transforming the built environment. I'm your host, Owen Keenan, and today I'm joined by someone who embodies the very spirit of this podcast, an engineer who didn't just use the tools available to him, but decided to build new ones. Stevan Lukic started out designing underground infrastructure and now leads Civils.ai, a company using AI to unlock data trapped in our industry's PDFs, drawings, and specs, and also contract documents. We'll explore his founder journey, the technical guts of Civils.ai, and why engineers should think of themselves as builders in more ways than one. So, Stevan, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me, Owen. Welcome to Singapore.
Yeah, thank you. No, it's a beautiful place here. We've been staying. It's quite warm. How long have you lived here for?
5 years.
Yeah,
but it doesn't feel that long.
Yeah, wow, that's it. And where were you originally from?
From the UK.
Yeah.
So grew up in the UK and then moved out here in 2019, just before the COVID pandemic.
Yeah, wow. There you go. I've given a short little blurb of an introduction, but I guess, would you be able to introduce yourself in your own words?
Yeah, sure thing. So I'm Stevan Lukic. So yeah, founder of Civils.ai. We're a construction tech startup, VC-backed construction tech startup focused on automation of document processes in construction. And we've been going for 3 years now. And my background's as a civil engineer. Used to work for Arup as a consultant on the tunneling projects, and now one of the co-founders of Civils.ai.
Yeah, great. Oh, well, I really appreciate you coming on the podcast.
Thank you.
No, it's great. And I'm really excited to sort of dive into and have a bit of a conversation around your journey, you know, as a bit of a startup founder, but also like as a civil engineer, because sometimes I think of engineers and, you know, we're down in the trenches and doing our calculations and writing specs or whatever it is, but it would be great to hear. So I guess jumping into that a little bit, thinking about it, I guess from your experience as a civil engineer and then jumping into like a tech style startup, can you share with me a little bit of the things that I guess you learned, and what most surprised you about the differences between, say, being an engineer and doing a startup? And maybe we can dive into that a bit. Yeah.
So it's a very steep learning curve. So as an engineer, as a civil engineer, you usually start off most presentations by saying something like my assumptions or my limitations, or you'd say, my calculation is based upon this. The limitations of that calculation is that it overestimates, blah, 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 something like this. And you always start with this note of sounding like this is how limited it is, like in terms of your tests or your knowledge. Whereas in the startup world, it's the complete opposite. You're supposed to start with rework in construction costs 2 billion a year. Next point, like move on to the next point in your presentation. You know, nothing to do with lining up your assumptions or anything like that. So Going from engineering into the startup world, if you presented in that way, you'd really find it difficult to encourage investors or business people to take an interest in what you're doing. So for me, that was probably the biggest difference, was the way in which you have to like present your ideas, and not to be more confident, I guess, in the idea or the problem that you're trying to solve, and let the questions come in terms of what assumptions you've made later on. Don't put it into the presentation. So that's probably one of the things I struggle with the most at the beginning.
So no, that's so true. And I think we think along very straight lines as engineers in a way, and sometimes it's different to selling something as well, or building something such as a startup. Bring us back, actually. Like, I'd love to hear about when you first thought of maybe doing something like this.
Sure. So I worked for quite a traditional contractor in the UK, quite a big one initially. And then when I was working there, it was very paper-based. I think the printer bill was something like $50,000 a year. Or
there you go.
Yeah. So piles of paper everywhere, and we were doing lots of annotations and like writing markups and everything manually. There were a few software licenses. I think we had like a dongle with one of the finite element software, and then some other software we used. It was very limited. But that was my first job out of university. So then when I moved in 2019 to here to Singapore, and was working for Arup. And Arup's an amazing company. When I arrived there, everyone's desk is clear. There's no paper anywhere. Although there's a library, there's no paper on anyone's desks, and there's just software for everything. And also these technical groups. So if I needed to find something from a past project, like for some reason, if I needed to know how was the Sydney Opera House designed, what's the like certain like steel connections that they use there, you could just go to these different groups that are organized, like knowledge sharing groups. And you could write, although I was doing tunneling projects, so I'd never ask about the Sydney Opera House.
That's right, yeah.
But, you could post in one of these technical groups, and there'll be someone in there that has that information, or they know about how that was designed. And there's technical experts to everything. If you need to know about some weird like thermodynamics thing, there's someone who's done a PhD on that, who's just in the company, and you're able to find them or get through to them. So that level on a company-wide organization was amazing. So I really encourage people to go work for that company at some point in their career. It's an amazing place. But like even working there, I saw that some of the processes with the work that I was doing was still very manual. So I was doing a lot of these work with these borehole logs, which is where they drill and take a sample of the ground and then you get a PDF. And I was spending so much of my time just typing that information into Excel or into this software I was using for the design. And I was like, why has this not been automated? Why am I still taking the paper, even in my opinion, like the best consultant in the world? Like, why were they still doing this process manually? And then I realized that actually like no one solved that problem up until when we started to try and do it. So yeah, there's that in the drawings and everything. Like there's still these processes which were really manual, that even the best consultant hadn't solved. So this was my inspiration for trying to solve some of these problems.
Yeah, right. That's like I found that a lot, is particularly there's just paper everywhere. When I first started my career about 10 years ago, that's what it was. It was like markups and things, and obviously Bluebeam and other things came into fruition. And but even still, data. We've got borehole data, or we've got asset data. Inspection reports. I do a lot of inspections and that sort of thing, and you have to just go through all of this stuff and get some sort of judgment out of it. What I found as well was, you're making design criteria calls, or you're making informed judgments on what you need to do next from this information that you painstakingly go through line by line as well. So, so you've identified I guess a pain point or a problem that needs to be solved. You don't just pick up the pencil and start building a company. Like how did that eventuate? Like how did you become that engineer to startup founder?
Yeah, so I spent about 5 years learning coding, like teaching myself programming, and then tried to build it myself, tried to build everything myself. But I was quite lucky because I started to like build some early prototypes of the things I was thinking about based on what I'd learned on some open source coding courses. I did some online called Harvard CS50. It's completely free, really good coding course. And during COVID, luckily, COVID meant that I wasn't really moving around much, and I was just like staying at home with nothing to do in my apartment. So I started to learn, like push myself more into coding. And it's such a steep learning curve because at the beginning, you're quite overwhelmed. It's like learning a new language. But then once you're able to start building some small projects yourself, it becomes really empowering or really exciting because you can just turn your own ideas into some reality. So I could like lay there on the sofa, just like, in my shorts or like shirt on, just think of something and just like build it. Now they call it vibe coding.
Yeah, that's right. You were vibe coding back in the day.
Yeah, without AI.
Without AI, yeah.
But yeah, like sat there doing my original vibe coding, and then started to build on a few things. And something I was really interested in at the time was this idea of reading the unstructured data, like these documents. Was reading a lot into AI, vision intelligence, which is like object recognition, and trying to understand how you can like label data and then train a model to pull that out into some structured format. So I was really interested in this. And I also saw that at the time, there wasn't really much going on with AI being applied in construction. Nowadays, it's the opposite. Everyone's got some AI angle. But at the time, it was not many people were interested in it. I think people didn't think there was much opportunity there. And it's hard to get the data. So so started like civil. I was like, I want to create the civil engineering AI. Didn't really have this like idea of how exactly I was going to do it, but looking across the different documents and drawings and trying to extract information was the main goal. And so got built some web application at the time. It was called tunnels.ai.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
And then had people reaching out to me after a while saying like, this is amazing, like really love it. So it inspired me to kind of leave my corporate job and then enroll in a startup accelerator. So it was a bit of a risk, and I was going there not necessarily so attached to my idea or what I was thinking, but also with an open mind to see maybe I'll work on something else. Maybe there'll be the next like TikTok or Instagram or something. There'll be some amazing founder there who I want to work with. So I wasn't overly attached to my idea. And then it was a bit like The Apprentice. If you've seen that TV show, you go and then there's like, Shark Tank, and then there's like a panel of the investors, and there's like 100 contestants, you could say. And then the idea is you kind of try and team up with people and pitch your idea to them. And there's some stages throughout, like people get kind of progressively cut from the program. It's really brutal. And then at the end of it, me and my two co-founders, we like pitched to the investors, and then we raised some money from them to kind of start the company.
Wow. There you go. So you started from, I guess, a problem and that you're experiencing, and then you just played around, or you were very interested in coding, and you went through the process of like teaching yourself how to code and prototyping your own applications and different workflows and other things like that, I'm sure. And then gaining some interest and seeing what you could actually do with this. And because construction or say engineering and other things like that sometimes can be slow adopters to this sort of stuff. So it's cool to see someone that's like forward thinking. And then the startup accelerator is pretty interesting. A lot of us, I've actually thought about certain things like that myself with different applications and how that works. And you mentioned the journey was quite an interesting one, where you had to go through and I guess pitch your idea and prove your idea and go through all the different things such as, I suppose, concept to product market fit and other things like that. I guess briefly, how's that journey coming out of the startup accelerator and sort of coming to the point where we're at now. And then I'd love to dive into exactly what you're doing now and some of the problems that you're solving.
Yeah, sure. So for the viewer's benefit, I guess, like, we don't have product market fit at the moment, and product market fit is this like dream goal where the stars align and the product, like the thing you're building, the technology you're building, really aligns to your some certain customer profile, and then your sales and everything just goes like exponential. So that's the dream for most startups, and like very few startups achieve that. And I'd say we're quite close. I think we're quite close to that, but I don't think we have product market fit yet. It's still a lot of so one thing we have to do is a lot of like education and a lot of like explaining about our product to potential customers. And the thing with selling AI products is that in today's market, especially in construction or traditional industries, is that you're not replacing some tool they already have. For example, AutoCAD. Let's say you're building a competitor to AutoCAD. When their license expires from AutoCAD, you could try and sell your enhanced version of AutoCAD to potential customers, and they'll understand what you're selling because that's they're already familiar with those features. Maybe yours are better. But the thing with selling AI products or bringing an AI product to market is that it's an entirely new tool that they're not replacing something with. So the process for actually bringing that to market is a lot more education. If you bring a new tool to market, you need to educate people on why they should be using it. So we've had to do a lot of kind of education, I guess, or explaining to, I think, the more like junior or working level, or they're like engineers or architects level, they understand. A lot of them understand. But when you're speaking to the more senior director level, it's a bit more having to explain why this new tool will make the company better.
Yeah, no, that's fair. It is a journey, isn't it, on the startup? And I think certainly one thing that struck me from your journey through that is that you were able to just jump into it, and you're like, with the startup accelerator, you mentioned that maybe this is the thing, maybe it's not, and maybe I'll try and just work on something, and through the process of that, I'll be able to find something that I can hold on to and move on with, which you've obviously doing at the moment with Civils.ai. And I think that's the mindset that I really want to highlight amongst people that are driven and want to be able to create things. And I think there's a lot of creativity that comes from doing things like that startup, but also the iteration that comes. You probably are starting at like V1, and then you go V1.1, and then you figure out what works and what doesn't work, and you go through that process. And I think for me anyway, that's the hardest shift for an engineer to think, because as a structural engineer, I need to make sure I design it to the code, and I need to make sure it's right the first time, as opposed to let's just try it, and if it doesn't work, that's fine. Like, we'll learn from the next thing.
Yeah, there's something called the mum test, which is used in startups, which is a theory that if you ask your mum, does this shirt look good on me? Or something, your mum's always going to say yeah, because she doesn't want to hurt your feelings. So if you say, is my startup good? Is my startup idea good? The mum test is that your friends and potential customers even will say, oh yeah, it's great. But they won't because they don't want to hurt your feelings. They know you've worked on it for 3 years or so. So they don't want to tell you your idea is bad. So the mum test is the theory that you should ask questions which prevent people from being able to give answers like that. So you don't say in terms of a problem you're solving, does this product solve this problem for you? Or like, is this good for you? You say something like, so can you show me your process now, what you do? Like, how do you solve this today? And then they explain it for you, like, objectively. So you see there's no room for them to be able to mislead you by trying not to hurt your feelings. When you're a structural engineer or any kind of engineer really, and you're designing to code, there's not any kind of mum test going on. It's like you're either compliant or you're not compliant, and people will not try to tell you otherwise.
Yeah. It's very or can be very black and white, but it's a great concept to think about, in terms of iteration and startup and trying to build something I'm sure. So I'd love to just dive a little bit into Civils.ai specifically. And I think it's a really great concept of a platform. I'd love to just, if you can explain simply what Civils.ai does to start, and we can go from there.
Yeah, sure thing. So Civils.ai is a cloud or a web application, and we're a document repository. So you can upload different types of construction documents, so drawings, reports, contracts, and then we've created different AI workflows for automating tasks on construction projects. So we go quite deeply into several different tasks. So our value proposition is that we have built it for construction, with construction in mind.
Yeah, great. And so I guess what are some of the main features that you have with Civils.ai? And you mentioned it's a repository of documents. Are you able to break that down and I guess talk about maybe some of the workflows or some of those features?
Yeah, so we've mainly helped with a lot of these earthworks projects or tunneling projects or big highways projects, anything that involves a lot of earth and infrastructure. So we started with something that was my biggest pain point and the thing that I really wanted to solve, which was these geotechnical reports. So for a lot of the big earthworks projects, they have these big site investigations that go on where they drill. Let's say you're building here in Singapore the new Cross Island line. It's like across from east to west, almost the whole of Singapore. And across that you have like 200,000 of these like drilling points where they go out and they drill and they take a sample of the ground and then they use that to design this new tunnel. The process for that was normally you'd receive PDFs. So you'd receive maybe 5,000 borehole logs for this stretch of the tunnel. And then for the engineers and for lots of different job roles, estimation, for structural engineering, for like the mechanical engineers who are designing the tunnel boring machines, they all need to know what is under the ground, and it's a big risk because there's some famous cases where they've got tunnel boring machines stuck under the ground and it's cost like billions of dollars to be able to remove them. It's really risky for people as well. So yeah, we wanted to automate that process you can just put the reports in and then we'll generate for you all of the data that you can just put into the engineering software or into the modeling software, using like vision intelligence AI to pull the sections out from these logs and kind of piece it back together. And we also built some tools for viewing it yourselves, like creating these models on Civils.ai. So that was the very first one of these AI workflows we built. And then we've always been very focused since then on the PDFs, various PDFs in construction. And the way we've thought about it is that there are already digital's good. There's already digital workflows and information on projects like BIM and the GIS data, like mapping and zoning information. All of that's great, but then there's so much that is in PDFs. So what if we can extract that information and in the future connect it in so you have your BIM data, your GIS data, and all of this untapped, siloed PDF data as well? And what could you do with that? So this is how we've kind of evolved Civils.ai to today.
Yeah, that's great. I think you're right where we do have a lot trapped in hidden places, particularly the PDFs and site data specifically, where people are taking either borehole logs on, scanned in PDFs or scanned in paper, or they're logging it on a platform. I think in this day and age, bringing together all that data is really, really important. I'd love to hear, if someone were to jump on right now, or say consultancy is looking they're like, oh, this is pretty interesting. I'd love to see how this would fit in my business. How does it work day to day for them? Do you have some examples, and how would they, I suppose, tap into some of the workflows that you've done?
So one of the biggest benefits I think Civils.ai brings is that it's quite similar to the way you store documents anyway, in terms of like we have a file, it's like a file repository. You can organize documents in terms of different projects. Then on top of that, we've built search engine across all of this information. So you can add in your specs, your contracts, your drawings, and then you can type in just a question like, what's the concrete strength classes for the foundations? And we can pull that information out. So it's like the RAG, retrieval augmented generation, is like a way of extracting the information out and making it so it's searchable. So day to day, we say it's mainly a time-saving tool. We save engineers and now also architects and just contractors as well. Quite a few different job roles using it, and we're a time-saving tool, so they don't need to go flicking through the PDF documents. And then for certain workflows, we go deeper than that. So for the borehole logs, and now we extract drawing information, but we're also working on quantities. So next month, we're also launching a feature for extracting PDF CAD quantities from the drawings. So you can type in how many doors are there on the project, how many windows, and then we'll like fetch that information off from all the drawings.
Yeah, that's great. That was something that really interested me actually about that, because I've done a lot of takeoffs on a lot of drawings, PDF drawings myself. I used to work for a contractor as well, and I've got to order all of my pipe work. I've got to figure out how much concrete there is on this pour or the square meterage, to be able to get that as a first pass on using some of these workflows would be quite amazing. How's the journey been building that feature?
So I thought the geotechnical reports were hard.
Yeah.
I thought the geotechnical reports were really hard to get the information out of because they're very varied. They're all different formats.
Yep.
And we were so proud when we've got like that launched and it's being used by a lot of people.
Yep.
But the drawings is on a whole nother level.
Yep.
It's the holy grail, I think, in terms of the construction industry of being able to extract data. I think to be able to extract the drawing information so valuable, but it's a very hard problem to do. So for the past 3 years or something, not myself, I'm not actually I taught myself coding and I still dabble a bit with some UI improvements, but actually I'm not the technical person at all in this sense. So my co-founder, and now we've got some other software engineers and data scientists who help us. So they're the ones who have been like looking into this for quite a long time. And we started with plan drawings. So we're doing mainly like the floor plans and site plans to start with, but then we have some goals of doing utilities, mechanical, electrical, maybe reinforced concrete and steel work, but that's even a completely different beast.
Yep.
So plan drawings, we've got something that's working, but it's still being like refined and tested.
Sure.
For measuring the counts of the different objects, the lengths and different areas based on the plan drawings and natural language prompting. So the process of actually building that, though, is very hard, and you have big data challenges. So as I'm sure you're well aware, in construction, people, the drawings is intellectual property for the clients or for always the clients actually. So for consultants, they can't share that information, and clients also don't want to share with tech startups. So we don't train on any data that we receive. So we had this dilemma of how do you build like AI models when you don't have any data much data to train from. There is actually some open source and publicly available data, but it's not much. So that's a very interesting problem to solve, and we actually have a solution to it.
Great. Yeah, that's great. I'm so excited to hear how that goes, and to see some of these workflows just to really sort of progress ahead into the more digital world, and become a little bit more automated than we used to go and give it to maybe some of our junior or graduate engineers to go and get the data and put it in a usable form, but now to be able to extract some really meaningful information out of all this data and to make some really good decisions. One thing I think would be really good to sort of clarify is people go, I've got ChatGPT on my thing, or I've got Copilot, can't I just like drag a bunch of stuff in there and do that, or ask it questions and put it in? What would be the differentiator between Civils.ai and something like that sort of platform?
I think that ChatGPT is actually really good, and a lot of people, I think it's the best place to start actually if you want to educate yourself or learn more and dabble with AI, I think it's actually the best tool to start with, because I think they've raised like $2 trillion or something.
Yeah,
So you can give everything away for free and get all of these amazing features. So I think it's the best place to start. Especially because engineers are quite tight-fisted and we like free stuff, don't we?
Yeah.
So I think that's the best place to start. But I mean, in terms of differences, so I think once you start experimenting with ChatGPT, you'll start to realize that it makes terrible mistakes on some things. So if you give it a CAD drawing and say, how many doors are there on this project, it will give you a number that's completely wrong. Like even within 2 seconds, you'll give it a huge mall or a huge 50-story apartment block, and they'll say there are 3 doors on the project.
Yeah. That's right. Yeah.
So instantly it's very wrong. And so because these are different types of AI problems. So this is actually a vision intelligence problem. It's not really a generative AI problem, whereas ChatGPT is using a different AI model to do that. So I think when you get to that stage, you realize that there is some need for something which is more capable or more advanced and more in the startup what we say like vertical. Like ChatGPT is very horizontal. It's not building something for construction. OpenAI is not building something for construction, building something for every other consumers all across the world, like medical, legal, even travel, like when you're going on holiday. So they don't care that much about construction. So there's a lot of vertical opportunity if you build something just for reading CAD drawings and doing takeoffs that's very specialized in that. Yeah, that's the value that Civils.ai would add.
Yeah, great. Yeah, and it makes sense actually, because you get some of these more narrow band, like tightly trained, specifically trained AIs that will be able to do those specific tasks that we're talking about, which is the drawing extraction and understanding construction documentation and that sort of things. And certainly my use of ChatGPT and the large language models has been quite good. It's like you said, it's very capable, but when you start to get into some really specific workflows and you really want some guts out of it, you need to be able to trust the information that's coming out of it, but also understand that like you said, it's broadly trained on as much like the broadest applications that it can. And there's obviously people building these specific tools for specific applications, which in this case, it's construction documentation. So, which sort of I think of Civils.ai and the potential of your concept and where it can go. And, information is key. And I think you're in the right sort of space for that, particularly in the construction industry, in consulting too. So, so leaning onto that a little bit, I think it'd be really good to talk about maybe some of the different things about AI adoption. There's so much hype around that word, and in a previous podcast, we talked about maybe some of the different definitions in our context as engineers, what that means for us. But thinking about the adoption now and the technology that's coming through and how maybe industry culture influences that as well. But I guess you mentioned maybe we had a chat before and you mentioned there might be some barriers to the adoption and things like that. And from your perspective, obviously going through the process and being one of the early adopters with it, what are some things, what are some of the main barriers that you see at the moment with regards to adopting AI or this emerging tech?
So other than the kind of educational topic I said about before, I'd say there's a big problem in, maybe not in construction specifically, but we have a lot of people who come to us on 2 ends of the spectrum. One will be, they come to us and they actually say, does this use AI agents?
Yep.
We're looking for something that uses AI agents. And I think to myself, like, if you go to buy a car, do you say, I'm looking for a car with an aluminium chassis? Or do I want a car with a steel chassis? It's not really the thing that you ask about. You don't really ask, or does it have Dunlop tires? Like, it's not the AI agents part is just a technology. It's the same as using JavaScript or Python. You don't say, does this software use Python? We're looking for something that uses Python. It's a technology that's just an enabler for some outcome. So I think so we have on the one side, I think people who are buying into the hype a bit too much, and they're looking for something that they don't really need. It's better to think more about the use case. Like we spend a lot of time doing this thing, and it's a bottleneck. Look for some AI that can help me to automate that away, or at least speed up the people who are doing it. And then we have people on the other end of the spectrum, which are, we've had some, I don't want to dunk on the EU, but I mean, we've had some customers who are in the EU, and we've already worked with them for 2 years. And then the IT team says, we've now decided to ban all AI tools in the company. And we have like case studies with them showing how much it's saved. And people are like the working level, the people who are actually the ones who bring in the money for the company, who do their timesheets and charge it to clients. They're the ones who are using it and love it. And then the IT team, who's actually an overhead. Sorry, I don't want to dunk on that. They tried it too much. So they might listen to this and they'll cause us problems. But then they're actually, to me, it's ridiculous to outright ban all AI tools in the company. It's moving backwards.
Yeah.
And this was quite a big company as well. So I think the middle ground is somewhere in between. I think that it's people who are willing to experiment with tools at this stage, and not necessarily use them for everything, but at least try and learn about how they work and what they're good for and what they're not good for. And then I think those people will be in a great position in the future because they've already adapted. And the people who are like, we ban it in our company, will be the ones who are being outcompeted.
Yeah, there is a bit of a spectrum, isn't there? Where, and I think of it as, you've got people that are really hyped up about it, and then they'll just take whatever they want to get. And then others that are all the way at the other end. It's like, nope, we're not going to be using it now. Maybe that's just a privacy thing or a trust thing or whatever it is. There might be different factors in there. I think for there specifically for the individual engineers, but some of those that are listening here, I'm sure there's been a lot of that are on either end of the spectrum where maybe they're just either using ChatGPT or Copilot. They've got some sort of LLM that they're able to enhance maybe some of their written workflows, or they might have some image stuff in there, and they might be seeing some productivity from that. I certainly have. I write a lot of reports. ChatGPT or some of the other models are really, really good at just being able to synthesize what I want to say in a really concise way, really quickly. And I don't have to waste my time on the semantics of how the paragraph structure works and other things like that, where I can work on, okay, this is what I want to say, and I'm saying it in my report. I write a lot of forensic type of reports. And so I think in our different roles and our different fields as engineers, it's really important just to start to be, I guess, that early adopter and just dabble in it a little bit. Like you said, just to go, okay, what's the next step? Or take an example from your book, you sort of started learning coding yourself, and you built a little application that would automate this one thing. And I think from that, as you build upon that, you become somewhat indispensable in a company, because if you're one of the only ones that have understand it quite deeply, you can be quite competitive as well. Mm-hmm. So I suppose you mentioned one thing, that was there's things that they're good at, and there's things that they might not be good at. And I think that changes every week. They become more capable, or they become really, really capable, but not really good at one thing. So I guess, what are some of those things? Just we'll shot fire some of that from your perspective. What are some things that they're really good at? What are some things that you might want to just go, okay, hold its hand and make sure you check that? So
yeah, okay. I think the first thing is kind of on the human side, and then I can speak on the AI side. I think the first thing is actually on the human side, which is a mindset shift, which is to change your mindset that software or to the tools we use aren't necessarily going to give you the correct answer 100% of the time, which is quite hard for people, especially in our industry engineering types, because we're so used to having something which is 100% correct. If it's not 100% correct, it's going to be like a legal issue or some kind of, can't use it. So I think that mindset shift is really important. So for example, now if I received, because with startups and business in general, you get a lot of contracts and things to sign. So if I receive some kind of contract and I don't understand it, I'll use AI to kind of help me analyze the contract and tell me where it could cause me problems. I still read the contract and I don't trust the AI answer 100%. So because it can make mistakes, but in terms of digesting a massive, huge amount of data that would take you a long time to understand, is much better. So now I'm trying to offload all of these tasks that will drain me for a whole afternoon. I try and just give it to an AI to like help me with that process. So I think the mindset shift is the number one thing. And then the second one is to understand a little bit about the different types of AI technology and what they're good at. So, for example, I said about vision intelligence, it's like object detection. So that's one type of AI that could be trained. You have to train those AIs to do a certain task. So in that case, if you want something to do some type of object detection, you'd want something that's very specialized in that particular task. But then you have tools which are more like generative AI, which is what ChatGPT is based on, which is more to do with just predicting the next token in a sentence. So that's all they're built on. So if I say the sky is, it'll probably say blue.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And all that technology is built on predicting the next token in a sequence. So to understand how those technologies work, they then make sense in terms of what they'd be good at and what they'd not be good at. Because if ChatGPT is doing token prediction, it turns out it's really bad at doing maths with token prediction, because maths isn't based on 2 + 2. The most likely thing is, 4.
Yeah.
It's more based on actual arithmetic and like rules. So it kind of, generative AI, bad at maths.
Yeah, that's it. And like, I think maybe another analogy would be to, like, as we're training engineers and as engineers develop and grow in their profession, you'll still give them tasks to do, but you'll still verify and check those tasks from an experienced engineer. And maybe that's one way to think about it. Maybe it's not, but I think there's common practices that we already have for verification in engineering that we can still follow, regardless of the tools that we use. And I think you highlighted it really, really well, is that tools are tools, and they're not going to get it right 100% of the time, but they're going to obviously make the function of a tool is to be specific in a way that can help us to perform a task. And when we do that, these can do it quite well in their sort of either narrow band or even broader band applications, I think. One thing I'd like to dive into just before we sort of wrap up is that, as we sit here now, I'm sure things are going to change fairly quickly over the next sort of 5 years, and it's hard to predict what that is. But what are some, thoughts around how it's going to intersect, these technologies are going to intersect our construction workflows or our engineering roles and other things, from your perspective in being on the forefront of that?
So I'm quite a firm believer in this thing called the singularity. I'm not sure if you've heard of this before, this concept, but it's the concept that artificial intelligence, robotics, all this type of automation is going to like coalesce at one moment, and then that will be like a kind of golden era for humanity that will reach AI will reach such a point it becomes like AGI, artificial general intelligence, and it's able to use lots of the data we already have to make new discoveries of drugs or processes that we use in construction. It'll be like new construction materials. It'll be like optimized designs that are like much better than the things we do today with our calculations. I really believe that will happen, and I think it will happen in the next like Well, it's a big question actually. When exactly that will happen. Some people will say 5 years from now, like Sam Altman and these like big CEOs. I think some of them say it's like 5 years from now, but maybe like 10 or 15. I think. So I think we're quite close to that moment. And in terms of for us as engineers, I think will be more important than ever. But I think this concept of like the master builder, in the past, many, many years ago, the civil engineers or the structural engineers and architects, they would have this kind of master builder role, which is like I think chief engineer is something similar to that now, but it's been a bit watered down, where they are like the center of the project, they're kind of controlling everything. I think that more engineers will have this kind of role where they're looking after many different things and they're kind of empowered by all these AI agents and assistants.
Now that's such an interesting take on it, I think, and it is so true that we obviously don't know exactly how it's going to play out, but you can see how fast things are moving right now and how I guess it's changing our mindset of what it is to be an engineer. But what I really like you said is engineers will be even more important at that stage, because once we have the capability of that, either intelligence or whatever it is, we can then use those applications to make life better for everybody, whether it be in construction or, like you said, different applications are endless with that. So really, really excited about the conversation. I'd like to hand you over now. We do a little bit of a skit and I hand you over to the AI host. And what it will do is it'll just, I guess, wrap up. It'll ask you a question, and then we can finish up and close. So if you don't mind.
Okay.
Let's see how this goes. I'll hand you over now to the AI host.
What if the true essence of engineering lies not just in the structures we create, but in the ways we reimagine what's possible? Today, Stevan Lukic has shown us how a shift in mindset can turn everyday challenges into opportunities for groundbreaking innovation. We've explored how Civils.ai is revolutionizing data use in construction and what that means for the future of our industry. Stevan, if we now have the power to model the unknown with such precision, how do you think that should reshape the way we approach design and decision-making?
Deep questions. So I think decision-making will become more straightforward with the different options which we can assess being presented more easily. I think we'll spend less time working on presentations to help decide on what the best option is, and the AI tools and other assistants that we're using will kind of present those options to us in a really, really clean, professional way. And that will free us up to look at more options and to like make better decisions, really. So I think that in the long run, with like increasingly powerful AI, I think the decision-making process will become better and better, and probably more fun, because you know that you're making the better decision.
Oh, that's great. Look, I really appreciate the chat and being able to go and dive a little bit into it. I'm sure we could talk for a long time about these different things, but I'm grateful for you explaining a little bit of your story as a startup founder as well. I think that's really instructive to a lot of maybe younger engineers or emerging engineers that are like, oh, actually, I want to build something and I can do it, and it's quite inspirational. So thank you again. Is there anything that you'd like to share to finish up? Any thoughts that you would have?
Please like and subscribe Owen's channel.
Thanks. And please definitely visit Civils.ai and get in touch with Stevan, because I know they're doing some great work there. So just to finish this off, Stevan's story is a reminder that engineering is ultimately about building, whether it's tunnels beneath the city or a new class of software to support our industry. Civils.ai isn't just a product, it's a proof point that with the right mindset and tools, engineers can solve not only technical problems, but structural ones in how we work. If you're curious to learn more, check out Civils.ai and Stevan's LinkedIn. And if this episode sparked any new ideas for you, share it with a colleague and leave us a review. We'll see you later. Cheers.